Okay, fine. Excellent. So, once again, being from Brooklyn, you might think that at the end of the side of Flatbush, Avenue A, you fall off the side of the earth, and the end of Avenue Z, that's the other side of the earth. But there's
Coney Island.
Coney Island, yeah. But it's actually, the earth goes a little bit wider than that, you know? So let's see how this works. So I'm just discussing, we got to discuss what's the need for a Dateline altogether. Who needs it? What's the point? So all the flat earthers out there, this year is not going to be that interesting. We don't need the Dateline. You don't know what the flat earthers are? Good, you're better off that way. I think Betty's, I could tell, yeah, sure?
I'm actually a flat earther.
Okay, great.
But Torah.
Yeah, okay, so as long as we believe the earth is a globe or sphere, then we have a question as to where is the Dateline. Now, why is this necessary? So let's just take our spaceship, our super fast plane. Let's freeze time. Yeah? Right now it's 12 p.m. California, Monday. Monday, 12 in the afternoon. Freeze time. Go 3 hours to the east. You'll get to New York, 3 p.m. Go another 6 hours to the north, to the east, 9 p.m. Right, we're freezing time. Another hour, 10 p.m. It's 10 p.m. It's 10 p.m., yes. Then we go another 7 hours around, keep on going around the globe. You know, in this page, we're going off the page and back on the other side. Are we ready to get to that? We're going right at this orange line. We're at Tokyo, right? 5 p.m. And then you keep on going past Tokyo.
Is it 5 p.m.?
5 a.m. You're right. I'm sorry. Thank you. 5 a.m. And then at some point, you're going to go from 5 a.m. in another, how many hours? Another 7 hours further. You're going to find yourself back 7 hours later, seemingly, back at 12 in the afternoon to be back at California at 12 in the afternoon on Tuesday. But once again, we froze time.
A day later.
We froze time, so we have a problem here. Because using that logic without a dateline, you are right now in California at Monday, 12 in the afternoon, and Tuesday, 12 in the afternoon, at the same time. Now, obviously, it can't be in one place, Monday and Tuesday. We have to, at some point, say, wait a second, it's the day earlier. If we're traveling in the eastward direction, we have to say, at some point, it's the day earlier. We have to pick somewhere. Because if not, it keeps on going later. You're going to get back to the same place, and it's going to be 24 hours later.
One thing, but these spaceships don't exist.
Right. I know they don't exist. I'm just trying to give this spaceship as an idea for us to understand. I thought that, for me, that was the easy way of viewing it. Without the spaceship.
Well,
Right now.
Let's put it this way. The spaceship doesn't exist, but people are simultaneously, you could say, on the whole circumference of the globe, right?
Okay.
So
there's in California, it's Monday, midday, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's in Tokyo, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. What's the problem?
Right. But when you travel from Tokyo to California, that's an additional 7 hours. It's a 7 hour, 7 time zones going from Tokyo. So if you keep on getting later, like we've been doing when we've been going around, we've been getting later. So now California should be 7 hours later than Tokyo. But for some reason, it is 17 hours earlier. But it should really be 7 hours later using that same logic of when you travel east, it keeps on getting later. So at some point in between Tokyo and California, all of a sudden we have to go back a day. Now where is that? So this is a problem that they really found out in the 1500s. A fellow by the name of Magellan, I think you pronounce it Magellan, I think.
Jewish?
No, Spanish. A Spanish sailor guy. Right now, so far what I said has nothing to do with halacha yet. I mean, directly. This is a world problem. So this fellow by the name of Magellan, a Spanish sailor, he got to, I don't know where, in somewhere in Asia he got to, and he's like, hey, guys, how's it going for you this beautiful Wednesday? And they said, Wednesday? It's Thursday. He's like, nope. I got my trusty calendar here. I've been checking off a box every day. It's Wednesday. And they said, sorry, Charlie, it's Thursday. And Magellan realized, he was obviously a smart sailor, traveler, and it hit him. He realized what's going on. And that's when he, informed his cronies in the world. That was his theory. And maybe people knew it beforehand, but he was the one credited with...
Are you talking about the secular world? Like
the secular world, secular. He was the one credited with the discovery, so to speak. Even though there are Arabic writings from a couple hundred years earlier, which seem to indicate it as well. But he was the one who, I guess, got the fame for it. Whether he actually discovered it or not, there's what the debate. But the credit he got. I'm
assuming you'll bring it up, maybe not, but the Kuzari discussed it.
Yeah. That's
500 years before.
Correct, exactly. So we will get there. Fine. So, like this. So the different places for a bunch of hundreds of years, different places had different demarcations of where they personally felt the line was. But when there wasn't so much travel, it was just a couple of merchants who were courageous enough to travel these waters, so it didn't really make so much of a crucial difference. But as world travel became more and more popular, it became very important for them to make a demarcation. So in the late 1800s, I think in the 1880s, some chevra got together from Greenwich, England, and they had ambassadors from various different countries to come to this conference. And they said, we are going to pick this place, out of all places, Greenwich, England. This is going to be the prime meridian. This is going to be 0 degrees. And we are going to make, on the opposite side of the world, 180 degrees away from here, we're going to make a line, conveniently cut it through the Pacific, where there's no real continents, no real problems, a couple of islands that we're going to have to deal with, but for the most part, no big issues, and that's going to be the international dateline. And that's when the day is going to go back. It's going to be convenient. And there were a couple of different places some maybe it was right then, maybe over the years, so, not so convenient for me. I don't really like that spot. So they zigzagged the line a little bit to make it convenient for whoever wanted to be on whatever side. In the 1990s, I think Samoa wanted to switch sides. So Samoa, they wanted to switch sides in the 1990s. So the international community said, no problem. You want to switch sides, we'll let you switch sides. And that's kind of what happened. Okay.
It's quite, so it jots out.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yes.
Yeah, the different places, they weren't so picky. Whichever side you want to be on, you could be on.
Okay, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. That's for the non-Jews. The non-Jews, they live happily ever after, and that's the end of the story. The question is, what do the Jews do? How does it work for the Jews? So, this question was not a very big question, not a very exciting question, until pretty recently, 1941. In 1941, as the Mir Yeshiva, along with Chachmei Lublin and a couple hundred other refugees, were escaping Europe, they went to Siberia, and then they went from Siberia to Kobe, Japan, on their way to their eventual destination of Shanghai. Now, when they were in Kobe, Japan, they weren't really sure whether they should be keeping Saturday as Shabbos or should they be keeping Sunday as Shabbos. And they kept 2-day Shabbos. And keeping 2-day Shabbos, okay. That's how they did it. They were Yeshiva Bachrim, they kept 2-day Shabbos. Then they realized we're coming up to Yom Kippur. What are we going to do for Yom Kippur? So they sent a telegram.
They can't fast 2 days.
Because not everybody's capable of fasting 2 days. For some people, it would be koch nefesh to fast 2 days. So they sent a letter to the Mir Rosh. One of the Mir Rosh Yeshivas made it to Yerushalayim. They sent them a letter. What do we do? he did not want to pass in the Sheila. It was above him. And by the way, there were big hitters there. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz was there, was in Japan. Reb Shmuel Birnbaum was a Bacher in Japan. Reb Cheskel Levenstein was in Japan. It's not like we're talking about,
Amshinover was there.
Amshinover was there, yeah. So they sent, there were big people there, but so they felt the need to send to Yerushalayim. The Rosh Shiva that was in Yerushalayim did not want to pass himself, so he went to the Chazon Ish to ask the Chazon Ish, what is the psak? Now, the Chazon Ish, as I'm going to explain in a second, his shita, he said that what the Japanese call Saturday, we call Friday. What the Japanese call Sunday, we call Shabbos. What the Japanese call Yom Kippur, when that year was a Wednesday, we say that Yom Kippur is Thursday. Eat on Wednesday, day of Yom Kippur, and fast on Thursday. So
they were right with Shabbos because they were keeping Saturday and Sunday.
Right, but he was saying the later day was the real day. Somebody else decided to send a letter to the Ger Rebbe in Yerushalayim. The Ger Rebbe also didn't want to paskin because he also felt it was too complicated, so to speak. So the Ger Rebbe decided to go to the expert of calendars and zmanim. That was Rabbi Yechiel Mechel Chikatinsky, the one who put together the calendar. So Rabbi Yechiel Mechel Chikatinsky, I'm going to explain his psak, why he came to what he said in a minute. But he said that Japan, what they call Saturday, is Shabbos, and Yom Kippur is Wednesday. This created a uproar, controversy, shuvas back and forth, and we're going to get into them. All the Rabbanim of Eretz Yisrael all had what to say, and all the tremendous light onto this topic that otherwise was pretty much a dead topic until that point. And now let's just explain the shitas. Okay, so I'm gonna break the shitas. There are 4 or 5 categories of shitas. It goes like this. Now, the interesting thing is, no Mishnah, no explicit Gemara, no Rambam, no Shulchan Aruch. Where do you start? So the Chazon Ish said, and by the way, no Chafetz Chaim on this either. Not much to borrow, yeah? So the Chazon Ish said, well, we have one source. What's the one source? There is a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah dealing with Kiddush HaChodesh. And it says that if the Moiled is after 12 o'clock noon in Yerushalayim, then that day cannot be Rosh Chodesh. The following day will be Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Rashi and Tosfos have an explanation on that Gemara, which has absolutely nothing to do with the sugya of the Dateline. However, there's a Baal Ma'or that the way that he...
Sorry, what does the Gemara say?
That if the Moila, the appearance of the new moon, is in Yerushalayim, is after 12 o'clock in the afternoon, that day cannot be deemed Rosh Chodesh.
Okay. You can see the moilad in the middle of the day?
It's not necessarily you have the vision, but the calculation of the moilad, of the appearance of the moilad, we're not doing Riyah anymore nowadays, but based on the
Gemara was speaking about when they were doing Riyah.
Yeah, but it's a good question. But the idea is when you could calculate that the moilad is going to appear after 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a given day, then that day it's already too late to make that day Rosh Chodesh. And as I said, Rashi and Tosfos and most of the Rishonim have an explanation of the Gemara that has nothing to do with the daylight. However, the Baal Ma'or, in explaining that Gemara, says that what does that mean? That means, what's Pshat in the Gemara? You need a place that didn't yet start the day. If everywhere in the world had started the day, you can no longer call that day Rosh Chodesh. So what is considered everywhere in the world starting that day? So 18 hours before 12 o'clock in the afternoon would be Shkia at some point on the globe. That point on the globe, which has Shkia 18 hours before 12 o'clock in the afternoon, that must be the beginning of the world. That's the dateline. And that's what the Baal Mor is saying, which in degrees is 270. Each degree is each 15 degrees is 1 hour. So to get 18 hours, that's 270 degrees to the east, or easier to say, 90 degrees to the west. There's 360 degrees in a globe. So 270 degrees to the east, or easier, 90 degrees to the west. That will be the point of the start of the world. And that was the Shita of the Chazon Ish, based on the Baal Mor. Now, to note, the Baal Mor was not coming to teach us Hilchos Dateline. That wasn't his focus at all. But you could see from what he's saying, he clearly held the Dateline was 90 degrees to the west of Yerushalayim, or 270 degrees to the east.
90 degrees to the east.
Oh, sorry, I said it the wrong way around. Right, thank you. 90 degrees to the east of Yerushalayim, which is 270 degrees to the west. Thank you. So that is clearly what the Baal Mor held, and there, even though that wasn't his focus of his piece, but you could see from what he was saying that is what he held. Okay. There's also, just to note, the Ritva.
Midday in Yerushalayim, it's Shkia.
The day before.
About 9 degrees east.
Yeah.
Day before.
Correct. 90 degrees east, yes, correct.
For the day's beginning. The day's beginning.
Once you're at 12 in the afternoon, Yerushalayim, the day's beginning
Shkia of that day.
Of the day earlier. Shkia of the day earlier. 18 hours earlier is at that line.
All right. On the right side. To the east of that line is the day earlier.
Correct, exactly.
So the west of that line is Shkia of that day.
Correct, exactly.
Right, so
correct.
Tuesday midday in Yerushalayim is in this.
To the right of this line is Monday night.
So again, Tuesday midday in Yerushalayim.
Tuesday midday in Yerushalayim.
Minus 18 hours. I'm starting the day.
In Japan, if it's Tuesday, mid 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Yerushalayim. In Japan, it's right before Shkia, Monday evening, going into Monday evening.
Wait, and what day is it Yerushalayim?
Tuesday afternoon.
They're going into Tuesday.
Yeah? Okay. So
Japan is part of it.
Yeah.
Japan is in Tuesday, like Yerushalayim.
No. We'll get before we get confused. We'll get there. So now we happens to be, just to point out, there's a Ritva that seems to be saying like the Baal Mor, but certainly not as clear. And there's a Ravid that argues on the Baal Mor. But the Chazon Ish wants to claim that the Ravid is arguing that it's Pshat on the Sugya, but not arguing on this idea of the Dateline. Okay? Fine. That is the Shita of the Chazon Ish. There's the Shita of Reb Mel Lieber. His Shita is, he doesn't really care so much about the Baal Mor. First of all, most Rishonim do not learn the Sugya that way. Furthermore, that's the Baal Mor is not the most authoritative Rishon in Psak. Also, the Baal Mor wasn't coming to say this din. The Baal Mor wasn't talking about the Dateline. You could just deduce it from the Baal Mor. He wants to say a simple svara. We know that Chazal can call Eretz Yisrael Yerushalayim. We're in Yerushalayim, 20 minutes away from here, 25-minute walk from here at Har Bayis. That is the center of the world. The Chazal referred to it Tibur Ha'il. It's the center of the world. When you discuss Mizrach in Chazal, it's Mizrach of Eretz Yisrael. When you discuss Ma'ariv, it's Ma'ariv of Eretz Yisrael. Meaning Eretz Yisrael is the center of the world. So if Eretz Yisrael, if Har Bayis is the center of the world, you draw a line 180 degrees to the east or to the west to get to the same spot, the opposite side of the world, and that is the beginning of the world, the beginning of the day. That's when you switch days. That's the starting point. Right? So in Svar, it seems pretty straightforward. Now, just to note, that is quite a difference in percentage of the globe, where there is a 25% of the globe difference between the Chazon Ish and Reb Mel Lieber. Happens to be, for luckily or whatever, 99% of that's water. So there's only a certain amount of civilization in the difference. It's not like you got the whole Europe in there. But
Quite a bit.
I'm sorry, I don't want to disgrace Australia or anything. But I'm saying relatively, there's a quarter of the world.
Right, it's like Mongolia and like Serbia and Siberia.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're not big countries. They're big.
Right.
Okay, so let's figure this out. Those are...
Wait, what's right this directly north of Australia?
Indonesia.
That's
The red thing is Indonesia?
All these islands.
No, the green.
This whole thing.
Well, this is not. These are like these crazy islands with like cannibals and whatnot, right?
Okay, so let's go for this. So then there's a third shita, which we are going to call, there's a bunch of different slight variations, so I'm going to group them all into one. There's the Baal HaIbur, there's the Bnei Tzion, there's the Atzei Sada, a bunch of different opinions, which aren't the most well-known names, there is a Chazal that says that when the world was created, the sun was in the 4th hour position when the world was created. Therefore, they work with the Baal Ma'or of 90 degrees to the east of Yerushalayim as being the starting point, and they add on an additional 4 hours, because if the world was created, when the world was created and Yerushalayim had the sun in the 4 hour point, they argue that proves, which obviously the Chazon Ish doesn't agree with this, but they would say that means that the starting point of the world must be 4 hours earlier. So you go to 90 degrees, which shows that hold on 1 second. 90 degrees of the Baal Ma'or plus additional 4 hours, which gets you 2/3 of the way between the Chazon Ish's dateline and Reb Shukatinsky's dateline. Now, I don't want to get too involved in this shita because it's not the most held of shita. But one thing that you got to give them props for, so to speak, or a siman that is very good for them, is they just cut straight through the Pacific Ocean.
Middle of nowhere.
They don't hit into anything. It seems like a little bit of like a siman min hashamayim for the shita. Like it really works out well. So there's not that many big hitters that go with this shita, but it really looks good.
I don't really understand the shita so well, but maybe you don't want to get into it.
Yeah, I think we'll just go forward with it. But, yeah. The next shita is the shita of, some people attribute it to a couple different people, but Reb Isser Zalman Meltzer is who I like to attribute it to, but it's also Reb Isser Zalman Meltzer, Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank, and Reb Menachem Mendel Karshish, I think is his name. Kasher, that's what it is. Menachem Mendel Kasher, that's what his name is. And this shita is mechudish while being mistaber. Which usually when you're mechudish, you're not so mistaber. It's mamish mistaber while also being mamish very mechudish. What does the shita say? It's very interesting, very perplexing. Wait a second. Let's take a step back and look at what's going on here. International Dateline. We have no Mishnah, no Gemara, no Rambam, no Torah, no Shulchan Aruch. Chav Chaim didn't even mention it. Is it shaykh that there's really a point there's a line that affects so much halacha, and nobody said anything about it, must be that we're meant to follow whatever the people say it is. Whatever they say Saturday, for us that's Shabbos. And we're going to follow whatever that Chevra in Greenwich decided. That this is Saturday and that's Sunday. That's what we follow. There's no way that we were meant to change halacha dramatically by some line, and it didn't make the Mishnah, it didn't make the Gemara, it didn't make the Shulchan Aruch, it didn't make the Rambam. It's not Sheikh. And yes, by the way, I forgot to mention again, the Baal Mor, also the Kuzari mentions it, but the Kuzari is not even a halacha sefer. There's no way that it was just deleted from all our halacha svarim.
But it spends many pages on it.
Yeah, no, we don't doubt it, but that's not a halachic source generally.
Right, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, correct. No, we see it's in the Chochmah of Chazal, but the fact that it's not mentioned in any halacha sefer until 1940s. There's a little discussion already by World War I, but whatever. Until the 20th century, it's a raya brura that we're not meant to make a dateline, and we should follow whatever they say. That's what the Reb Mel Meltzer says, and I think it's on one hand it's very mistaber, but on the other hand it's very mechudish, because what some chevra in Greenwich is going to say is going to tell me whether I eat on Wednesday, whether Yom Kippur is Wednesday or Yom Kippur is Thursday, whether I'm going to be chayav kares is dependent on the chevra in Greenwich.
Not only that, they changed it.
Yes.
Meaning they decided that in whatever you said, 1888 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Until then, there were different stuff. Exactly.
It changed one year to the next.
Yeah.
Look, I thought that the reason why you could explain the reason why it wasn't mentioned in halacha was because, like you said, it wasn't really lamaisa.
I know, but we view that halacha has the vision to dictate for the future, and it's not like this shayla. There was a new mitzias that created the shayla. There's a new mitzias that made the shayla more relevant, but the shayla always existed. If it would be like, we don't know the halachas of airplane travel, okay, we could talk. That wasn't. But now this halacha should have been told to us beforehand, even if it wasn't so lamaisa. Okay, so one more shayla.
And it's not as if the Rishonim thought the world was flat.
Correct. You see clearly that the Baal Mor and the Kuzari clearly, Bisman Rishonim, saw that it was round.
Rambam for sure. Aristotle already. It's at the time it's even before the Tanam, I guess, was already saying the world was a sphere. So.
One more shita, Reb Yonason Shteif. He says that we're meant to follow it's very similar starting point, same spiel as the Reb Meltzer, but a slightly different variation. Must be that we're meant to follow the Messiah of each place. They've been counting since Brias Olam. They've been counting the days. We have no reason to assume that any place got confused on the days. As a society, you should be able to get it right.
I mean, non-Jewish Messiah.
Non-Jewish Messiah. And each place, we follow their Messiah as to whatever they say the day is. What's the nafkamina between Reb Yonason Shteif and Reb Mel Meltzer?
Greenwich.
Nafkamina is Alaska.
Oh, I would say Greenwich, because if somebody changed because they made a council in Greenwich, that's nothing to do with the Masorah.
Right now, we don't really know so much. Mostly Greenwich, they tried to work with everybody's Masorah.
Oh, okay.
That was part of that's why they had representatives from all these places, because they tried to work with everybody's Masorah. But Alaska, what happened in Alaska was, Alaska held themselves to be over the date line, so to speak, away from America, on the Russia side of the date line. And then, in 1867, I think it was, if I remember correctly, America bought Alaska from Russia. And when America bought Alaska to Russia, America said, come to our side of the Dateline as well. And I think it was a Tuesday. They did Tuesday twice. So, according to the Messiah of Alaska, Shabbos is Friday. But according to the Anhaga of Greenwich, they treat it as Shabbos.
That's not really Missouri, Alaska. Are you talking about the indigenous?
Yeah.
The indigenous.
Yeah.
Not Russian settlers.
Right, but I think the Russian settlers are following the locals on Haga. And Lafi, that
I don't
local
know how long
Haga.
people live in Alaska for. Maybe long.
We don't know. I don't know. I don't know exactly either, but that's the idea. So I want to just discuss right now, from a Chabura standpoint, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the different opinions. So the Chazon Ish will argue for his opinion. I have a makar in the Rishonim. You guys are throwing out svaras right and left. I have a Baal Ma'or, and this is shot in the Gemara. So you paskin shaylas. You paskin shaylas by a Gemara, Rishon, Psak. I'm right.
Wait, who's that?
The Chazon Ish. I have a Rishon, you don't. Yeah? And the slight difference between we'll call those other shitas, that the Chazon Ish would say, I don't care if the world was in the 4-hour point, whatever. That's Baal Ma'or doesn't mention anything about that 4-hour point, and I don't really take that into account. I know I'm not getting too involved in that, because that's really a minor shita, so I'm not getting too involved, but to keep it simple. Okay, the Bichil Mechel Chikatinsky, he argues that is not a very authoritative figure, a minor shita in the Gemara, which isn't a rishon that's often the halacha, and seemingly it's against svara. Furthermore, he argued on the Chazon Ish that you're cutting straight through tons of landmass. You cut through Siberia, you cut through the Philippines, you cut through Indonesia, you cut through Australia, you're cutting through tons of landmass. It's not mistaber that you have two people who are living on opposite sides of the street, and this guy's making Kiddush and that guy's making Havdalah. It can't be. And therefore, what I'm saying, and we see in Chazal that Eretz Yisrael is called the center of the world. So if we see in Chazal that Eretz Yisrael is the center of the world, we don't need to factor in that Baal Ma'or, and in Svara, what I run is much better. I cut through Alaska as well. Well, there was no Jews in Alaska, but we know that where the Chazon Ish wants to cut through, there were Jews there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and nobody made a stink of this until now. By the way, because of this question, the Chazon Ish ended up giving in and being mechadish a concept called Gerera. He was a mechadish that anything that has at least part of the country or landmass to the west of the line, the entire area is dragged to the west. So even Australia, which is a big chiddush, Australia only has a small percentage of it, which is on the west of the Chazon Ish's line. He says the whole Australia gets dragged to the left of that line.
And it can be dragged the other way because then you get the whole world, basically.
Yeah, no, because once you start, we're not going to cut you in the middle. Meaning to the left of the line, to the west of the line is before the date line. So we're not going to... You're good. So now we can't make a date line to cut you once we start.
Right, but I'm saying he's not saying, let's drag it to the east, because then you get the whole...
Mm-hmm. Then the whole world is correct, exactly. So that was how the Chazon Ish got out of it, so to speak.
He said that because of that taina?
Yes.
So he changed his mind because of that taina.
He agreed. There was shuvas going back. Reb Mel Lieber said it's not mistaber, and he was masking to the claim of Reb Mel Lieber that it wasn't mistaber, and therefore he gave in, so to speak, on that point. Whereas they seem to both not be so concerned about Alaska because there was no history of Jews living there.
I just want to say, how long had Jews been living in?
Apparently they say.
So long.
Apparently they say for hundreds of years there were Jews in Upper Russia and whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Now, the Rav Yisrael Meltzer pretty much discussed he has the Svar advantage, but there's the Chiddush of the Chaver in Greenwich. And Rav Yonason Steif has his issues with, who says the Messiah is correct and etc. And that is the basics of who says what. And the next point in this sugya is Lamaisa, what we should do. Just to tell you, just to add up the sheet account, what ended up happening in Kobe, Japan, is the Mir Yeshiva and Chacham Lublin ended up accepting the psak of the Chazon Ish. And they ate on Wednesday, and they fasted on Thursday. To note, interestingly enough, most of the poskim. So on one hand, it looks like a fight between.
Was that in line with the Messiah of Japan?
No.
Oh.
No. There was a very small community of Jews in Japan, and it was against what they were doing.
Local?
They were keeping Wednesday, Saturday or Shabbos. This very small local community, which apparently was in the tens, but it existed. They were keeping Saturday or Shabbos, and the Chazon Ish said no. Now, to note, this, by the way, who do you choose, the Chazon Ish versus Reb Mel Lieber? So just a little background.
Or Tzvi Pesach Frank.
Or which were huge also. So it seems to be that the Chazon Ish was viewed as the international heavyweight champion of Psak. And you don't want to mess with the Chazon Ish. Mitzad Sheni, what's interesting over here is Reb Mel, even though he wasn't the heavyweight champion of Psak, he was the heavyweight champion of this topic. When it came to Zmanim and calendars and geography and that type of stuff, he was the heavyweight champion of the topic in specific. So that made it perplexing of who actually to follow.
Because he was an expert in that topic.
Yeah, but the Rav and Shmuel, which as we know, we pass him by Rav by Isser v'Heter, and we pass him by Shmuel by Dinei Mamonos. But Rav and Shmuel were equated as equals. Over here, what makes this interesting is nobody's saying that Reb Mel Lieber was as great as the Chazon Ish in general, but on this topic, he was boss. Now, to note the other opinions on the table, interestingly enough, people don't realize this, but who stacked up and who? So first of all, on the Chazon Ish side, he probably had the number 2 heavyweight champion, debatably, was the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav agreed with his Dateline, but interestingly enough, the Brisker Rav did not agree with his Greira Chiddush. And the Brisker Rav wanted to cut through landmass. Then on the other side, the people that agreed with the Reb Mel, first of all, Reb Yashiv. He was much younger at that point, so, right? Reb Yashiv. Rav Shlomo Zalman also agreed, but he was scared to go against the Chazon Ish until he spoke it over with Rav Moshe Feinstein. And once he saw that Rav Moshe Feinstein agreed with Reb Mel Lieber, so then Rav Shlomo Zalman said, "I'm joining." So you have Reb Yashiv, you have Rav Shlomo Zalman, you have Rav Moshe, you have Rav Henkin, you have Rav Gussman. Roiv of the place.
Sounds like Bnei Brak versus.
In a way.
Oh, the Brisker was here.
The Brisker was Yerushalayim, yeah. It's pretty much, it was the Chazon Ish was pretty much taking on the world, and the Brisker Rav also. But they were probably the two, I guess you call it relatively the two biggest heavyweights in Psak. Mr. Zalman was a Rosh Yeshiva, not as much as the Pesach.
I've never even heard of Tzvi Pesach Frank being involved in this. Isn't that weird?
It is weird. It's interesting.
Tzvi Pesach Frank.
Yeah, it is interesting. Different people, huh? Maybe. I don't know. Rav Shach was Mr. Zalman's son.
No, they're necessarily the same age. They both died in like the 50s, right? Tzvi Pesach Frank died in the 50s.
Well, yeah, I don't know. But that's, for whatever reason, this shita that's interesting is not the most well-known shita. Everybody talks about Reb Mel Lieber versus the Chazon Ish on this matter, and it seems that Roy Poskim go with Reb Mel Lieber. Most of the... Now we're going to have now I guess not for today because we're running out of time, but we're going to have the challenge. Usually there's like a Gemara, there's Machlokes Rishonim, and what do the Poskim say? You know, so you have the Magen Avram versus the Shach and the Taz this way, or maybe you have sometimes, over here, he's not like, what does Reb Moshe hold? Reb Moshe was one of the opinions. What does Chazon Ish hold? He was one of the opinions.
There's no prior opinions.
There's no prior opinions. So now we, the modern day, the people that are alive, we have to decide who are we going to follow. Do we pick one of these opinions and go with it? Or do we have to make some form of a compromise as to how we should be naig when we go to, like, lots of places, Japan, New Zealand, Hawaii, Alaska, and definitely all these little islands, for the chaver that goes to Fiji and all those type of places, and Guam, and
Fiji has a Jewish community.
Maybe I know somebody who goes to Guam a couple of times a year, Chabadsker, who told me there's a couple hundred Jews, nobody from, but a couple hundred Jews there, and he doesn't.
There's actually a French island off the coast of Australia over here in the red.
Tasmania?
No.
No devil there?
It's like a tiny little island over here. And there's Jews there. Actually, someone from the neighborhood is from there originally.
Interesting. I don't know. But that's the sugya. That's the idea. We're going to have to get involved into how we're actually going to paskin.